both from the EU expert group, but also in my capacity as being president for the TCI Network, where this topic is also really high on the agenda. Yes, some years ago, we made this first publication, Clusters in the Circular Economy, together with Enterprise Youth Network. I know that's also a very active partner in Ireland, and it's, by the way, also great to be here and hear so many interesting things happening in Ireland, and I'm happy to support you also on your journey for cluster development. But this publication we did some years ago, and we were quite, I work with clusters, it's not that high on the agenda, but this publication was tweeted and retweeted and shared, I think, 10,000 times on different social media platforms. So that this was really the first time for my organization to make something with that big amount of impact. And I think what it did and what it showed was that why really clusters matter is that they are these neutral platforms. They build networks with companies, and in terms of dealing with circular transition, we need this kind of neutral facilitating platforms to get it right. We could see at that point in this publication that the clusters were really good at building the bridge between knowledge institutions and research and the companies. They were good at opening new doors to new markets. They were also quite good in attracting new investors, new green money. And we can also see that there's this need for new skills, and here clusters could also help to upgrade and reskill the specialists in their sectors. So over the last year, after the pandemic hit us hard, we of course tried also to track a lot what is happening now with our economy. And this is where I used a bit my position in the TCI network, where we can see the clusters really played a role in offering this neutral platform to deal with the shock. Great way of also supporting members to be change agents and help companies to take that journey. Also, we could see a lot of things happening last year on this transformation to the next phase. Basically, we don't know what is happening, but following the leads with the companies and helping them to shift their mindsets. We could also see clusters in the early days of the pandemic were quite good in bringing new solutions and adapt production to the new needs we had, and also really using the broader ecosystem behind the clusters. We could also see many clusters last year quite good in this cross-clustering collaboration. So reaching out to green clusters, digital clusters, life science clusters, and really being very innovative and developing new ideas. Then we did this publication a while ago on clusters in circular economy. We thought, okay, let's see what is happening. Can we afford a green transition, or do we really need to rethink the whole concept? So Clusterx in Denmark, my day work, as so to say, together with TCI Network and also Enterprise Youth Network, did this big survey where we had respondent people coming in from around the world and filling in a survey and also sharing some cases. So we did this publication last year, and actually our concern on can circular economy be maintained, or can we even use this as a way of reigniting the economy? And the cluster organizations responding to the survey were actually quite positive. I mean, nobody said no. That would be perhaps my guess, and quite many, almost 70% responded, yes, circular transition is a way to help SMEs to reignite the economy. So for us, that was quite positive, but also a bit surprising. So then going a bit deeper, how can circular economy really help to reignite the economy? So one thing the pandemic also taught us that is we need to be much better aware of how we use our resources. So, so having a better understanding of the resource streams in the companies, and then also perhaps using more wasted resources, and you can share them with other companies. So really taking the whole concept of circular economy in this make, use, reuse, and share that across many companies. We could also see that the circular economy helps to build a more secure supply chain, and this is also something that was severely challenged last year with the pandemic. So for the companies to have a better understanding, how is my supply chain looking, and how can I build this in a better way to build a more robust supply chain of materials, component and productions. We can also see that pandemic created more competitive markets in some ways. There was new markets and products being developed very fast last year. And some of those new circular products help to open even more and new markets and create new positions as well. I come back to some of the examples I have on this later on. Last year, there were also a lot of new funding opportunities coming out, and this is still coming out a lot. I'll come back to the European Green Deal in a moment, but heavily investing in recovery, but adding the green element on top. So don't go back to the bad black economy, but engaging and really working with the green transition in the funding schemes is something we see very clearly now. Then we also see that the digitalization that all of us also experience a lot, but this is also now being built in to many of the circular transitions we are seeing. So because if you have an overview or use different digital tools and intelligence, then you will also know more about your resource streams, and you can really get a better overview of your production. There, of course, is a big focus on upskilling and reskilling. And working with circular transition, companies will become more equipped with competence to cope with the changes around the corona. So we can see that on these six areas, that green circular transition really helped to reignite the economy. Yeah, so going a bit deeper and asking the cluster organizations, how has your clusters really worked with circular economy and the green transition? We can see, and the majority of the activities the clusters are offering is around innovation projects with the companies. And of course, it makes a lot of sense. You really need to get new knowledge, new insights into the companies, and you need to also explore what is working and what isn't working. We can see many cluster organizations are quite strong on doing events and workshops to build awareness and understanding of what is this all about and how can companies adapt to the new situation. Again, we can see this really bridging the gap between knowledge institutions, because there's so much knowledge in our knowledge institutions around green technologies, but that needs to be transferred to companies, and companies will not have the time or the resources to find the knowledge themselves. So again, an area where the cluster organizations really play a key role in bridging this gap. We can also see there's a need for building even more strategic partnerships. Some of the challenges we face around green transition are so overwhelming. So we really need professional facilitators, professional leaders in this area that can really say, okay, we need to tap into those challenges. We need to build some partnerships around this. And this is also an area where many cluster organizations played a key and a leading role in making this happen. Then there's a lot of training of SMEs to really change the mindset, change the business model, help them on a very practical level on adapting. And then there's access to finance, either on the investor side or some of the public money out there. So the impact of the cluster organizations, we also asked the cluster organizations that question, and we can see it's a lot about pushing new knowledge, really understanding technology possibility, understanding about the market circumstances. So really taking new knowledge into the companies. It's also about the competence side, either really upskilling or reskilling your employees is a barrier for many SMEs, and also one of the many reasons why you might hesitate to really go fully into the green transition. We can also see on a very positive note that the cluster organization really helped both to build new circular services and also to develop new circular products. So that's a very nice, very specific outcome of the cluster organizational work during last year. Then also access to new markets. You might know your own local market, but really going abroad is a different thing, and you need, again, cluster organizations to help you on that path. Yeah, so cluster organizations in general offer quite many different services, and we were interested in understanding, is there a change in something not so popular and something a lot more popular? And this overview in this graph actually shows that on all parameters, there was a big need from the company side to help on all areas. So it's both new knowledge, the development of new products, developing new services, and access to new markets. So actually it was, basically the message here is that the companies really needed the cluster organizations to help in all of these areas. So basically a need for cluster organizations to help with the transition. So just some ideas or some specific cases on how clusters have helped during last year and on making the circular transition. So, and here the digital tools really was something we could see that the cluster organizations were good in organizing and also quite creative in saying, okay, we cannot go back, we cannot, just wait. The circular transition is here, and we need to make the adaptation now. So we need to set up a range of different digital activities. So one thing is really webinars, bringing in knowledge providers, researchers to show what is happening around green transition. So we can see a bunch of webinars, I guess, but you might also have attended some of them, but many webinars on this topic. We could see some Swedish, Danish clusters also working together on some online masterclasses to really make a tailor-made program for entrepreneurs who want to make a difference, in this case for sustainable buildings. But we see also many masterclasses online on this topic. We could see many cluster organizations also going into like meet the buyers online. So we could really, they could help the companies and the knowledge institutions. And this case was around cities and large international companies, so they could really meet and build new solutions together. So, but just some basic ideas and some cases on how we could see different clusters adapting and offering and really supporting during last year, and the feedback we also got, that was a huge interest from the company side. So some of these events were fully overbooked, and they had to do several events or activities to match the needs. In the ebook, and I will put in a link for the ebook in the end, on clusters and circular economy, we also found 6 cases. So some of them are from Denmark, some are from Europe, and we have actually also one from Russia. And the first one is really, I think it's 8 or 10 Danish clusters going together on a very big program in Denmark to really go across supply chain and help companies to greenify their supply chain. I'll come back to the case in a minute. This reskilling and upskilling for digital circular transition is a French case, a very strong French cluster. I think they have 1,000 members actually. So, and then you really use digitalization as a way of understanding the potential for circular transition and help the companies to reskill and upskill, so they really understood what can digitalization bring to my company. We can also, and this is one of the cases from Russia, is a very classical tire company, tire cluster actually, using the rubber material both as end products, so how can they use that for other products and go into new markets, and also how can they reuse this. So this case is also a cluster that, both, work with new knowledge, help the companies to get into new markets, and also to develop new products and services. And then we have, all the things around the meat and the CO2 emission from the meat sector. So a Spanish case on how to work with green transition in a slaughterhouse to better use the protein in the meat, and that could help to greenify some of the meat products as well. And the final case is from Sweden, sustainable packaging. As you know, we have received many packages last year because we couldn't go to shops. And those packages also need to be more sustainable because there's a lot of CO2 emission related to that. But those cases are also in the ebook, and you can dive into the examples later on. Just zooming a little bit into Denmark, because we have had a green election some years ago, and our current government has very, very high ambitions on the green transition. And for us working with clusters, we are very happy to see that the clusters have a prominent role and a very integrated role in the new strategies coming out from the government. So can I read the Danish one on the left side? It's a strategy for investment in green research, technology and innovation. And here cluster organizations shall contribute with innovation in collaboration between the research businesses and other relevant actors. And currently we have these emissions out on 4 areas. It's a funding for around 100 million euros in the first phase. So it's again huge funding, and it's a lot about the first phase is about building a roadmap and understanding how do we get there. So this is a very long term, a very high level, where clusters play a key role in bringing in their stakeholders and all their knowledge. So this is just a brief overview of the current new cluster landscape. This was started January 21, building on existing 40 clusters. So we had spent quite a while over the last 2 years consolidating all of this, and it's not just consolidating the cluster organizations, it's been consolidating the ecosystems behind each of the clusters. An integrated part of the new cluster program is that in all sectors, they need to focus on digitalization and green transition. So even, for instance, our Danish sound cluster or our Vision Denmark cluster, I mean, clusters not normally working with green transition, all of them have had to focus on how can we make this transition happening and how do we work with our members. And for them, some of them, it really meant, okay, we need to go back, we need to analyze a bit deeper, where are the climate challenges in our clusters and how can we help to do this. While we, of course, has CLEAN, that some of you might know, it's very global international cluster with, of course, a very high clean technology profile. So some of them are really first movers also in Denmark, and some of them have really had also to adapt their own services and activities to the new. One cluster that really moved into the circular economy is our lifestyle and design cluster. This is a screen dump for the homepage. You can see circular economy is actually fully integrated now in how what they focus on. They also had a difficult journey starting back many years, talking to their companies about, yeah, but we also need to focus on green transition. And, in the textile industry, it's just a lot about using resources, and then you burn all the leftover materials and the clothes. And that's, of course, super bad for the climate. So this cluster really went into the companies were not so happy about this in the beginning. So this is an example of a cluster manager really saying, yeah, but this is the trend, we need to go into this. And they have really developed extremely good concept and very successful concept. So this project was actually launched in as the big pandemic hit us in March last year. All their offerings to the companies have been oversigned. So there's been a lot of requests from companies to use that. And it's a 3-step process. It's quite simple. It's really offering a strategy to the companies. How can you be more efficient? It's a plan to be very specific. How can you develop more a circular business plan, and also helping them to get into different investment schemes as well. it was last year funded by the EU regional funds. And it's also part of the strategy I just mentioned, but it will now be boosted also with the EU REACT funds to a much higher level and actually into all sectors. So this is a cluster not just focused on textile and design and whatever, but actually going into all sectors and collaborating with all our clusters on this topic. And then just dwelling a bit, because I think my time is more or less up, is this the European Green Deal. We can see that the clusters play a nice role here. We can also see there's a lot of funding, and I guess you have been in good contact from Ireland with the Commission on this topic, but they're very eager to help along and to really make more regional discussions on the challenges you might have, and also how can your clusters help with this. But there is a lot of funding going into this. Of course, some of the EU funding isn't always the most easy ones, and the hit rate isn't always perfect, but the funding is there, and clusters do play a role and are also expected to play a role. And we know the quality of the applications coming from clusters are in general at a very high level. And this is also something the Commission is knowing. But as was mentioned in the beginning, I'm also part of this European expert group on clusters. I'm now leading, together with Bianca Dragomir, as you also know, the co-work on the green transition. And we now focus on the implementation part. So if you have any creative ideas, put them in the chat, please, because now is the time to make your voice heard. And we're now working on implementing or suggesting implementation initiatives following the report coming out early this year. Yeah. Yes, and I just need to click to the next. Yeah, so just final slide. In case you want to go deep in this publication we did on how to go towards a new greener normal, both how clusters have been dealing with the circular transition, and also going into cases I mentioned. There's a link, it's open source, you can just use it. And then in TCI Network, I also initiated a TCI Green Lab. We don't record those sessions because I wanted like a more exclusive, more also a space where we could share our challenges and also experiment a bit on what is working and what isn't working. But I really truly think that we need to share what we know, so we can, transform or transmit our learnings across the world. And it's really led for me to many good discussions with Canada, US, Australia on this topic, and definitely something we will do later this year as well.
Thank you very much indeed, Merete. I think the key message for me there is that clusters have a key part to play in the solution to the green economy and climate challenges that face us, and Denmark is clearly showing the way in doing that. I'm very interested to hear as well the European context as well as the Danish one, the European expert group on clusters, on which Ireland is represented. I'm very glad to say that some submissions that we had in relation to the expert report have been sent back to the Commission through our national representative. And I'm also glad to note that our Department of Employment, Trade and Enterprise is about to initiate a review of cluster policy in Ireland. And of course, we look forward to playing a part in that. And I'm sure many people in the audience today will also. Just a couple of messages there. The links that you've given for Denmark and for the TCI report are now in the chat box. And if anybody has any questions, please send them through on the chat box or directly to Nathan, and we'll take them later. You'll be available for our panel discussion as well, I think, Merete. So moving on, I'd like to introduce our two main panelists today. First of all, we have Katarina Power. Katarina is the lead in the Bioeconomy Cluster, Southwest Ireland, based in the Technical University of Munster. She has many years' experience in developing clusters both here and in Canada, and indeed I first came across her at a clean tech conference in Canada at the end of March, which was a European Union Canada interaction on clean technology, which of course would cover the green transition and the circular economy as well. So also joined here by Filippo Martinelli. Filippo is the European ambassador to the Irish Bioeconomy Foundation. And there's a very interesting synergy here this morning in that the Irish Bioeconomy Foundation is based on the site of a former zinc mine in County Tipperary. And the zinc mine had a very successful operating life. It closed in 2015, 2016, I think. And the after use of that mine site is a very interesting example of an appropriate and useful outcome, and is an example, I suppose, of circular economy, because on that mine site, it has been properly rehabilitated. It has a wind farm, and now it has the Irish Bioeconomy Foundation. So I think that's a good example of circularity. We weren't to know this when we were putting the program together for today, but that's a happy coincidence, I think. Just turning to you first, Katrina, and I know Merete has touched on this, but you might care to elaborate. What role do you see the bioeconomy having in the European green transition on a European level, first of all?
Sure, thanks, Sean. And thanks to the Cluster Centre for having me today. It's great to be here. So in terms of the role of the bioeconomy, it's quite significant for the green transition. The bioeconomy fundamentally is renewable biological resources coming from agriculture, marine, forestry, food waste, byproducts, and the ability then to be able to take that waste and that material and make it into a value-added product like energy or feed or other types of bioproducts. Why is that significant? It's significant because it can replace fossil-based products. And that's very important when we're, in the context of a circular economy, in the context of, green transition. And so I guess the benefits of that would be, carbon. So there'd be less carbon being emitted. There's going to be, utilization of food waste, for example. That means that, there's less carbon emitted into the atmosphere that's going to landfills. There's potential for clean energy from biogas, for heating and for electricity, and that's coming from all different types of waste. Also, there's potential for sustainable fuels as well through the production of ethanol and making that into biofuels. So there's actually a lot of benefits for bioeconomy and green transition. And so we know that brands are aware of this as well. So big companies across Europe are looking at the potential. They're aware of bioeconomy, they're aware of bioproducts. We actually have some data from a project that we do at Munster Technological University, where we analyzed their interest in it. 95% of them said, yes, we want to integrate bioproducts into our value chain because that's helps us to be lower carbon and helps us meet the green transition goals. We know that consumers are also really interested in that as well. So for example, 93% of those surveyed in Ireland and in Finland were like, consumers said, yeah, I'd rather buy a bio-based product. That's my preference. And so what we're hearing is that there's consumer demand, the market is shifting fundamentally towards green transition, and you're seeing brands, you're seeing companies, you're seeing everyone trying to participate. And so our role as clusters is to help facilitate that within the European context. So I'll pass it over to my colleagues.
Filippo, the same question to you indeed. What you see the role of bioeconomy is in green transition?
Very good, thanks. So thanks for having us, myself and Irish Bioeconomy Foundation. Thanks a lot also for having invited Catriona, because with her intervention, I must start my answer saying whatever Catriona has said, we fully agreed, because we are fully aligned with her with an answer. I will elaborate further on some elements, but you cannot essentially have green transition in Europe or in Ireland without the bioeconomy for two reasons. One, it will be physically impossible to have green or circular without bio, as bio is at least half of the circular story, if you want to look at it that way. Second, because if you look at either energy or matter, so if you look at energy, whatever green energy solution there are, some are bio, some are not, but bio is a big component of the renewable energy solutions. Biofuels will be there. Whenever you move away from energy and you move to matter or material, a big part of materials are organic materials, meaning made of carbon. So whenever it's something made of carbon, you most likely either get it from fossil fuel, or some niches applications expect to get it out of air. So carbon capture and utilization. But most of it, the most direct way, the most sustainable and most renewable way is to get it from biomass. So organic residues. In fact, one can argue fossil fuel used to be biomass millions of years ago. So it's not conceptually different. It's just that you're using the renewable version of it instead of a fossil one. So you are introducing carbon into the atmosphere from something that will then grow again tomorrow, so recapture it again, as opposed to adding it to the atmosphere with something that was stored for millions of years. So you're not creating unbalance, but you're creating balance. So what is the contribution to bioeconomy? It's essentially sustainable materials. For example, bioplastics, so packaging, biodegradable or not, in any case, bio-based, as opposed to fossil, or as said, biofuels, or any other applications. In fact, you would have flavors and fragrances, food and feed, pharma, cosmetics. You would have more and more molecules or ingredients being based as a bio-based solution, that it will be normally more sustainable, but it can also unlock new functions and functionalities which cannot be reached out from traditional chemistry, from traditional petrochemistry. Okay, so whatever Catriona has said, plus a few comments from my side here, that will be a good representation of our position, and should highlight how it's simply not possible to deal with circularity and sustainability without touching the bioeconomy. Not necessarily one will mention the word bioeconomy, as different sectors would use different jargon, but that's semantic. The matter is, whenever it's circular, 50% chance it's also bio, we hope.
And staying with you for the moment, Filippo, the role of the Irish Bioeconomy Foundation in that regard, I think you were the manager of that for a while. You were certainly involved in the earlier stages, and I think there's somebody from the foundation on the call this morning.
Yes.
But do you feel that the concept of that foundation is being adequately, is it materializing as you would have expected?
Okay, very good. So I have the benefit of not being Irish, so coming from abroad. I have the benefit of being a foreigner, having impressions coming from abroad originally. I've been involved with the Irish Bioeconomy Foundation for many years, before it started and after it started, having been the first full-time CEO and now European ambassador. One very strong strength of Ireland was the entrepreneurship climate and a very strong agribusiness, followed by forestry and marine. There were a lot of good ideas and good industries, good industrial concepts developing here and there. Not necessarily they were well networked. So there was a missing space to be filled by a national bioeconomy association or a national innovation cluster. So that is the mission of IBF. That is the mission that IBF is fulfilling, and it's taking it step by step. Probably the software of IBF has developed faster than some elements of the hardware, but in any case, both and more will need to be developed in time. Again, there are many entrepreneurs hidden in the different counties doing great things. Not all of them know each other. So connecting the dots between entrepreneurs, between academia, between feedstock suppliers or primary producers, that is a key role that was missing. In fact, in Ireland, it was done by a few individuals, remarkable individuals here and there, but there was missing a structured way to do so. As there is also another cluster in this call, it's important for me to state that Irish Bioeconomy Foundation is not an alternative to the other clusters that are active in the different corners of the island of Ireland. but our ambition is to be a thin overlayer connecting the dots between different companies and different clusters, each on their own regions. So among our members, there are in fact people from Munster, people from Honduras, Nagueltaca, and others segments. So what are we doing? We're helping the Irish bioeconomy to grow. We are helping companies, universities, but also clusters. It's not that we know more of everybody, but from our positioning and our quite good footprint in Europe, I have to say, we're being quite lucky in securing more and more European funding and solid European network. Most of these projects are about supporting entrepreneurs or supporting academics in their path to market. That was actually more than we expected, and we're kick off a new project in 2 weeks about access to finance, helping inventors to secure investments for their disruptive technologies. So a lot is happening, a lot more could be happening, will happen in time. So that is Irish Bioeconomy Foundation. That is what we do. And just a small remark, our motto used to be growing the Irish bioeconomy together, and now it is growing Ireland's bioeconomy together, to have a more of an all-island approach. So connecting back to some questions that were earlier.
Thanks for that, Filippo. Can I ask you maybe to comment on the all-island aspect of this, Katrina?
Yes.
Are you aware of how that's evolving?
On the all-island, yeah, I think there's a lot of interest in it. So for example, a whole new suite of clusters has recently been funded by Enterprise Ireland across Ireland. Some of them are on the call today. And I know that, they may focus on the marine economy, they might focus on furniture, they might focus on construction, but they're all thinking about how to embed circular and potentially bioeconomy as well into their strategies. So for me, I see it becoming an all-Ireland approach in terms of the green transition. It's a no-brainer in terms of, trying to unlock new income streams, trying to, support companies and things like that. So that's where I think there's an opportunity.
And when I say all island, I mean, of course, Northern Ireland as well. Is there linkage in this regard evolving that you're aware of with any clusters in Northern Ireland?
In terms of the clusters, not to my knowledge, but in terms of the research institutions, I believe there is collaboration, particularly around the use of materials, whether it's forestry based or agricultural based or marine based, and like how to, take those materials and then create a value added bio-based products. So I think there's a lot of collaboration on the academic side that we're seeing.
Very good. And I think it's fairly clear that clusters are a good tool for acceleration of the case in Ireland and in Europe. Would either of you feel, or Merete is welcome to comment on this, are clusters and networks working at national levels adequately to achieve the circular economy goals? Yeah,
I would say they are. I would say we work a lot. I work a lot with Filippo and the team at IBF, and through them, me personally, I'm able to access a European project. And so that's a great example of how we collaborate. And that European project actually benefits the SMEs on the regional basis in the Southwest. And that project's called Empower Bio. And it's just, so there's a lot of collaboration. There's also the Irish Bioeconomy Network as well. And, that's with Bioorbic, who's an SFI research center, with the other academic institutions and education institutions, and IBF as well. And, they come together around Bioeconomy Week, which is on in the October, I believe, of this year. And so there's a lot of collaboration in trying to get the message out there, the positioning, trying to support the companies, and making sure that it's the right support is getting to the companies at the right time. So, and who those people are.